Today we're talking about taking trips with the whole family. Welcome to Vacation Mavens, the podcast that brings you travel inspiration and practical tips from two moms who know how to plan the perfect trip.
I'm Tamara from Your Time to Fly.
And I'm Kim from Stuffed Suitcase. With over 40 years of travel experience between us, we're here to share our favorite destinations from road trips to cruising, theme parks, and European adventures.
Whether you're planning a family vacation or a mom getaway, we have the tips and tricks to make memories that will last a lifetime. So this week we're back with another guest and one of our very good friends from travel blogging space and an early family travel blogger. Kirsten Maxwell is a travel expert and founder of Kids Are a Trip and Groups Are a Trip, who has turned her adventures across 40 plus countries into inspiring travel resources. The best adventures happen when you travel with the people you love the most. And that is exactly what we're talking about today. Because Kirsten, I'm so glad you could join us because you're who I think of when I think about multi-generational trips.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad that's how you think of me because I feel that's been like my life is trying to put together these trips for my family, other people's family, answering those questions about like, how do you address all the different ages? And we're going to get into it today.
Yeah. So I think it's not always a term that everyone's familiar with, and it can take a lot of different forms. Can you explain for our listeners, like, what do we mean by multi-generational group trips and what are some different types that we can take?
I think lately we've been seeing a lot of talk in the media about multi-generational travel, and it does look different for everyone. So whether that's 3 generations, so you have the kids, the parents, the grandparents, whether you have a skip gen, which would be grandparents and their grandchildren traveling together, or it could be, just a Greek trip where you're traveling with your siblings, their kids, etc. I've even seen gen trips that have great grandparents invited. It's really just extended family, however that looks to you and how you define it. I think that's a very general term, is multi-generational travel, to cover all those different.
Yeah, I was recently in Ecuador and I met a family, grandparents traveling with their grandson who had just graduated from 8th grade. So they take all of their grandchildren on like a one-on-one trip when they graduate from 8th grade. And I saw a few of that in the Galapagos too, of like grandparents with the grandchildren without the parents. So I don't think that's something everybody always thinks about, but it's actually pretty common.
Yeah, I love. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we did that with my parents would take each kid when they were 11. They took them on different trips. So we had incidents with flying minors unaccompanied. So that kind of stopped. So by the last child, I flew with my youngest to my parents and let them have their own weekend together. And that kind of worked out great. And so, yeah, it looks different for everybody though. And kids love it.
Yeah, I was going to say culturally, I think if most of our audience is American, I think it's more of a novel thing in the American culture. But when I travel internationally and like when you're in other countries and other cultures and other citizens of other countries, it seems to be more commonplace to actually have multi-generational group traveling together, a parent with the couple and their kids traveling along. I was going to say one of the things I know, and I'm glad that you mentioned that it can be extended family as well, because our family for many years did a multi-gen trip with my father-in-law, but also with my brother and sister-in-law. And that was always a cruise, a specific week. We knew like my brother-in-law is a teacher. He had a specific week off in the fall and we'd always plan it for that week. And so I know cruises are really popular. Beyond cruising, what other tips or ideas do you have for people to get started on coming up with an idea if they do want to do something like this? And what considerations do they need to take in mind?
Sure. I think obviously cruising is easy because everybody gets their own space. You can meet up in common areas. But at the end of the day, cruising is with 1,000 of your other friends. I think there's a turn where people are looking for ways to get away from the crowds, just in general, travel wise. I think people are looking at renting private homes and maybe everybody can be under one roof, or they're looking at lodges or resorts that can accommodate everybody, because then you can have your space like a cruise ship if you do that way, because you do have your own room, but then you could be together. And depending on the resort, you may be able to have a bigger property to yourself anyway. Other things like a dude ranch vacation. When we went to a dude ranch in Colorado, there was a family that was grandma, both of her daughters, and both of the daughters' children. And they all were in one place at the dude ranch. But talk about a great opportunity to interact with each other and engage, and then have activities built into the entire vacation.
Yeah, you mentioned the different kinds of activities. And one of the things that I find challenging when I'm planning, at least with our family, is like trying to accommodate all of those different interests or different requirements and just making everybody happy. Like it can definitely be a headache to plan a multi-gen trip. So do you have any tips of things people should think about or just advice for people that are looking to plan something like this?
Sure. I think first and foremost, you have to start with a family meeting. So whether that's a Zoom call or a party line phone call where everybody's on the line, talk about what everybody's expectations are. What's the budget? Where does everybody want to go? How far do people want to travel? Do they want to drive? Do they want to fly? There's so many different questions that need to be asked before the planning can even begin. So I think that's the most important is to start having those questions. What kind of activities do people want? How many a day? Do we have days that we just don't do anything and everybody goes their own way? So I think trying to get those questions answered up front. And if I didn't say budget, I meant to say budget too. But make sure those things, because they're super important, are discussed before you even go down the road of booking flights, finding a place to go, all the things. Have the hard conversation to begin with.
Yeah, and when you talked about budget, like that makes me think like we've been fortunate when we've done things with Glenn's family. Often, like his father will pay for everyone, just great. Not everybody can do that, and so I've seen a mix of the everyone's paying for their own, or maybe grandparents are paying for certain things, but then the families are paying for maybe their own activities or their own flights or something like that. And so I always feel like whenever there's a trip with multiple people involved, like setting the parameters and expectations like upfront is so important. Like even I know we've probably discussed just as friends too, like when we've brought a friend along with us, what are the rules when you
Mhm.
belong and like who pays for what and all of that.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think also something that you bring up, I think budget and activities is great, but when you're thinking about those activities, also think about mobility needs or limitations, and I think that's an important thing where are you is some of the stuff gonna require long walking, or is it accessible if somebody needs a walker, or if you're staying somewhere with only stairs, do you need an elevator? Like, things like that you have to also take into consideration, I think, and then I was thinking of food. I know when we've done some trips, it's one of the reasons cruising is so easy is because the food's taken care of, you don't have to think about it, but if you're, like, renting a vacation home, who's gonna make breakfast? Who's doing the cleanup? Who's doing all of that? Because that's another big if one family likes to keep things clean a certain way and another family doesn't, then it can be very stressful, not a relaxing vacation.
That's so true. When we did a big house with Glenn's family in Florida a few years ago, we ended up doing most of the cooking because everyone else like not a big cook. And so one time somebody grilled and someone else was responsible for, okay, then you're going to go pick up whatever we're bringing in if you're not like actually cooking. But I remember the family will talk about it, be like, oh, remember that was so great. And Glenn made this and that. And let's do that again. And we're like, but maybe we don't cook all the time.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's like we're not your private chef.
exactly.
Real vacation when you're doing all the work.
I think I'd take cooking over cleanup afterwards, so anytime, like, I'll get the groceries and make the meal, then I'm like, "Paul, you gotta deal with the chaos in the kitchen when I leave."
I think I
Yeah.
was pretty clear. I was like, in our house, like whoever cooks, the other person cleans.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So
But you
go ahead.
bring up a really good point I was going to say about the cooking and meals and the cost. So it's really important that you have these discussions because one of our recent trips, we found ourselves going to the grocery store every day because it was just, we're going to wing it. And then here's where we're going to do this. And then you're going to the grocery store, those costs are adding up. That's another thing is to use an app like Splitwise where you can just tally
Yeah.
of what's being spent. And then so at the end, everybody can just split it up. Or even if you want to do it as you go along, make sure that, you're tracking so that not one person is carrying the load, whether it's cooking in the kitchen or spending all the money on the activities or booking the activities, and that's their expense. But find a way that makes that you're communicating who needs to pay what. Don't be afraid to have those conversations because at the end of the day, you're just going to have hard feelings if somebody's left holding the bill and they don't get
Yeah.
reimbursed anything on the trip.
Absolutely,
And
that's a
you
great
brought
tip.
up someone's booking and doing all that work. And I think as a travel advisor, I'm working with a few different clients now on multi-gen trips. And one of the things I tell them is like, I get to be not the bad guy, but I get to be the person, like, instead of it all being on your shoulders, like, I like to have one point person instead of dealing with everyone. I don't mind doing a call with everyone, but I don't want to have to field a million questions if I don't have to. But having someone else be the one that's recommending what to do, where to stay, like some of those things take some of that burden off of whoever's the ringleader of the family trip.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think again, I think what you said to just start it off, Kirsten, that people don't always think about is having that original call or discussion of just and maybe having some silos of stuff. Okay, here's what's everyone comfortable with budget wise? What are the dates going to be? Who's going to be responsible for each of these like silos? And then, yeah, I think that's great. So we've talked about cruising. You've had some great tips. Do you have any favorite like resorts or destinations that you think if people are considering one of these trips and maybe they're just getting started, where would you point them?
Because we're talking about groups with all ages of people, I'm assuming, and as you mentioned, accessibility comes there. There are going to be places where, when I think accessibility, I think Lisbon, Portugal is not a place that I'm like, take your grandma in the wheelchair because you just, the hills, everything is San Francisco, same thing.
Yeah.
So I think you want to find destinations that are accessible by a car, usually, and to go between activities. Lake Tahoe comes to mind. Very easy to have something for everybody. You have the lake, so if people want to go paddleboarding. There's miniature golf, so people can do. There's golf courses, so if grandma and grandpa or even the kids are into golf, they can go golf. There's tennis. And of course, I'm talking during the summer, so obviously there are different activities in the winter. But I feel that destination has a lot to offer. There's white water rafting. There's floating down the river if somebody doesn't want to do that. So destinations like that are the all-in-one package. Orlando is probably another one because you can do theme park days. You can do activities in the local small towns. There's Gatorland that's not far from there. So there's a little bit of something for everybody. And it doesn't have to all be outdoors. So I think probably New York City. Granted, it's going to be hard for a lot of people who maybe have sensory issues because it can be overwhelming, but it could also be a great place because you have Central Park there. You have the museums there. You have outdoor activities. You could go to Ellis Island and take the ferry over. So things like that, those destinations that are on one, if you're not going to a resort that has those activities surrounding it.
Mhm.
And I know you have a lot of experience with all-inclusive
Yeah.
resorts. Like I know you've checked out a lot of them in Mexico. You may have even been on our podcast before about them. I don't remember. But
Yeah.
do you have any of those? Because I think that's a really popular option. Just like cruising, it makes it easier in terms
Yeah.
of like foods included. There's activities for different types of interests and all of that. Do you have any favorites that you would say for a multi-gen group?
Yeah, I'm going to definitely say something that I'm sure you know as a travel advisor you're familiar with, but Hotel Escaret in Cancun.
Mhm.
Hands down, everybody loves it. It's one of those places where grandparents love it, the kids love it, the teens love it, mom and dad love it because it has the built-in activities. You can go off-site to their different parks. They have
Yeah.
eco throughout Cancun area. So whether it's going to their cenotes, which is all their cenotes where you can go swim and dive and zip line and do something like that, or you want to go to, they have Shell Ha, XEL hyphen Ha, and it's got water slides, zip lining again in the water, swimming in cave. It is attached to the resort, but not attached. So it's like a Disney World for Mexico. That's the best way to explain it, where you can have access to these different activities and you're not confined to the resort, and they will organize everything to get you to their offsite parks, if you will. And I'm sure I don't know enough about it, but I do know people like Bahamar in the Bahamas. So
Yeah.
maybe Tamara or Kim, if you're familiar with that, I think that's another great property that speaks for multi-gen.
We did actually just
Trip.
do an episode on that because we took my family with Glenn's family took a multi-gen trip there in June. So yeah, lots of good options there.
Nice.
What about also another place that I'm going back to soon is beaches.
Mhm.
Beaches in Turks and Caicos is one of my favorite of that brand. And that, especially when you have little kids,
Yeah.
because they have the Sesame Street, but even with the older kids, they have the teen club, and they do diving, and they have so many other activities that are built in too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think kids clubs are also a good thing because parents, it's where if a parent is sometimes taking care of their parents, their next gen up, and they're like on being that, and then they're also on being a mom or a dad, maybe they might feel completely exhausted and not really like they got a chance to relax. So I think making sure that it's a good kids club, because some resorts say they have a kids club, but it's like a hole in the wall in some conference room. Beaches does a good job, I know, with the kids club and actually having activities. Same like with celebrity cruises. Surprisingly enough, of course, Disney's known for their kids clubs, but we've always thought celebrity, because it's smaller, not as many kids, their kids clubs, the activities they do are a little more variety and not just stick them in a room.
Yeah, and you have to look at the timing of kids clubs. I know I've done a lot of like hotel tours recently,
Yeah.
and when I talk to them about their kids clubs, sometimes they're only during the day.
Yeah.
Whereas I think where a lot of parents might like it is if
Dinner time.
they could, yeah, give their kids like an early dinner, have the kids hang out there for a while, they go have a more adult dinner. So
Absolutely.
otherwise, you're stuck at like the buffet restaurant every night or something.
Yeah. Yep. At least until they're a certain age where you can leave them in the room or something. But yeah, that's a while away.
Yeah, I know that I'm not sure if they do it still, but Finest Playa Mujeres used to have a thing where they would take your kids for you while you were eating dinner and go and have dinner with your kids so that you actually could enjoy a nice meal by yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
I know
so I
even
would,
at places like Disney World and Disneyland, they have nanny services where you can book through a company and you can hire a nanny that'll come and stay with your kids at night in your room and stuff while you go out to a nice dinner and stuff. So there are services like that as well.
I remember the Dude Ranch that we did quite a few years ago now. The way that they set it up, because it's family style dining, but the way they set it up was that the adults would do cocktail hour and the kids would all eat together. And then the kids would go play and they could just go really just run wild in a way while the adults then had dinner. So that was a nice way. Not every ranch does it that way. Some are a little more like a typical restaurant or things like that, but it was a neat option.
that's actually a really good point, and we didn't even talk about that, but it reminded me tours, guided tours, so group tours.
Yes.
Like that's a great thing for multi-generational groups because when you're talking about that, I'm reminded of our Adventures by Disney trip we did to Costa Rica, and they would have nights where they would take the kids aside and the kids would all have a group dinner together
Yep.
while the parents had a group dinner together, which was really a nice break
Yeah.
from being on all the time. But yeah, and I think Dude Ranches also do a good job of that, dividing out. The kids have their own dinner, parents have their own dinner, and it's not every night, but it's once or twice during the week that you're there. And same with Adventures by Disney. So it was just a nice way to find quiet time.
Yeah.
To enjoy the vacation part of your
Absolutely.
vacation.
No, I remember that was a similar thing on our Adventures by Disney as well. I remember that where they do a good job of kind of the kids also, and that's where I think you're right on that group tours is like when we did our oars river rafting down the water, they interact with the other kids. And so sometimes they'll finish eating and then they're like hanging out on the beach or whatever while the adults are chatting. And so it can be those group tours. You're right that it gives them somebody else to interact with. So you're not having to take care of them and entertain them.
And there's a lot that really specialize in families. I know you guys have both done Adventures by Disney, which is the cream of the crop with some of it, but there's Thompson Family Adventures, there's Talk. I know when I was in Galapagos, there was a big group from Talk that was there. There's quite a few others. And I've seen some, I can't think of which company it is off the top of my head, but I've seen some that have specialized tours that are not just for families, but they even have ones that are for generational.
Yeah.
Or sorry, for grandparents.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, they can get really specific.
That's awesome.
So
I saw that with Backroads
nice.
when I was looking at some walking trips with Backroads. I saw sometimes they had it like specific age groups or like you said, grandparents or multi-gen. They'll mention that because I think group tours do a great job of helping get people on the right trip with people in a similar age demographic to help engage with that from what I've understood, the different ones.
Yeah, I think Road Scholar is one of the ones.
Oh, yeah.
Grandparents, child tours, and
that's it. Yep.
yeah, I think that's another great thing to look at for families is maybe you don't want to do any of the work, so you release it to the tour company and let them plan everything. Granted, it depends on your budget, again, at the end of the day, but it's a nice way to not have to worry about the meals, the activities, the transportation. It is in somebody else's hands, and I think that's for some people, that's going to be
even just being the group leader, right? Because you guys probably all feel this, but when we travel now, it's like everyone just turns to me. So it's like, where are we going? Which way do we go? How do we get everything? And so sometimes you're like, oh, I would like to take a little break sometimes. So that can be really nice because when you're trying to corral 14 people or however
Yeah.
large the group is,
Yeah.
it gets really tiring to have that on one person.
I was going to mention also when we're talking about even cruises or trips or something when you are a large group, a lot of times some of those companies offer a group pricing for 10 or more bookings. So that's another thing I think a good tip is that if you are a larger group, maybe call a cruise line or a resort or a tour and just say, hey, if we're going to be booking 12, what kind of deal can you give us for our group? And then that helps when you're going back for the budget conversations. You can be like, okay, I can get us a group rate, and this would be the total per person. So,
Yeah, I know that AMA Waterways, if you're looking at river cruises, they have a group minimum of 6 cabins.
yeah,
So, yeah.
great. Anything final that you want to share, Kirsten, before we get ready to ask you our closeout questions?
Oh, no, I think we covered a lot of it. Again, at the end of the day, it's really about finding the right fit for your group. So
Mhm.
it's not a one size fits all kind of trip. So have those discussions, have them early, have them often. If you need to come back to things where you're like, they weren't really clear, or you need to nail down some details. I think even if you need to have a scheduled monthly
Yeah.
call leading up to the trip and just say, hey, I want to check in. Because again, the end of the day, there is going to be a leader, like you said, and it's probably going to be us. But there's got to be one person that's spearheading everything, and they're going to need to check in with somebody. So delegate if that's you. If you're the leader, delegate.
Yeah.
That's my biggest advice. And communication essential to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Perfect.
Great. We do have some questions that we like to ask our guests. And now that we're getting back into interviewing other people, it's nice to get some other viewpoints. But I was wondering, do you have any favorite travel gear that you're loving right now, whether it's clothing or suitcases or anything that you're using when you travel?
So I thought about this long and hard, and I was like, because I haven't traveled recently, but I have a whole bunch of travel coming
Yeah.
up, and the big thing that's concerning me is safety. So because I'm doing some solo travel, and so I've looked at all the backpacks, all the things that work, the safety stuff, but this is my favorite. I'm gonna show you. So this is a phone case, and it's got the strap on it, so I can wear it as a crossbody. But
Bandolier?
yeah, it's not bandolier.
Okay.
It's a knockoff
Similar.
version.
Knockoff.
It's not, but it holds all my stuff, my cards. And so I can actually leave and go out and explore the city. I have this on my body and my phone case, and just I am always easy grab for pictures because that's what I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Travel. And so I think this, yeah, it's exactly like the bandolier, the generic version,
Yeah.
which I'm always and not go with it anymore. I'm just
Yeah.
yeah, and they have short wrist straps for it too. It comes with it, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
for me
Oh,
as well.
Tamara got me
My
hooked on those crossbody. Oh, yeah, I
Yes,
was like,
Yeah.
hooked on the crossbody phone. My thing for me is I get the attachment that I can put because I already have a MagSafe case that I really like, but I like the
Yeah.
card wallet ones like that. And especially if they're RFID, that's the big thing I've been hearing about. Enough people aren't caring about is the RFID stuff, which in busy
yeah.
tourists, it's not like they're pickpocketing anymore. They're just walking around with the RFID scanner and stealing your credit card info.
Yeah, great. I got to go
Scammers.
it does that. It's just like, okay.
I don't think mine does that too. But one thing I like about mine is so beat up, I don't have my strap on it now. And if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see us holding up our phones. But
Yeah.
look for one that has a really good, strong strap, like the one you showed
Mhm.
Kirsten and the one that I have, and good hooks. Because some of them, like I bought and it was so flimsy.
Yeah.
You look at the strap, I know that somebody would be able to cut that or snap it just very easily. So you want one that you can't just grab away from you. But I agree. You don't want to walk around with just a phone in your hand because that's an invitation for someone just to run by and grab it and
Yeah.
go. But you're having it out constantly, whether you're looking at your directions or you're taking a photo. And
Mhm.
so having it right there instead of pulling it out of a bag, especially if you have your bag like zipper locked and all the rest.
Yeah,
Right, right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
inevitably, you'll quickly put it in a pocket thinking, "Oh, it's fine, I'll remember," and then it's yeah. So,
yeah,
Yeah.
my extra tip is to put either, granted, it's going to get cooler, so you can do this, but put a jacket or a sweater over the strap so the crossbody is under that.
Mhm.
It's just a whole nother layer of protection to make sure somebody's not grabbing your phone.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because we cannot live without our phones.
It's true.
Not anymore these days, and you have to have
I
a power bank to go with it because we're all using our phones so much. It's like you can't spend a day
I
out
hate
there.
that.
Let's wrap out by reminding all of our listeners where they can find you, Kirsten, online.
Sure. So I have two sites. Group Sarah Trip is going to be super helpful for this episode,
Mhm.
groupsaratrip.com. I also have kidsaratrip.com is my first original site. And if you're on Instagram, you can find me at Travels with Kirsten.
Excellent. We'll link to all that in the show notes. And thank you for coming to share your knowledge with us and getting to chat today.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Nice chatting with you. Bye.
If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe and rate and review on your favorite podcast app, as that helps other people discover us. And if you want to see more, follow me, Tamara, at Your Time to Fly on Instagram and Facebook and all the others.
And you can follow me, Kim, at Stuff Suitcase on Instagram, Facebook, and of course my blog.